Hi, my name is Smyth, founder and CEO of Agile. The topic for today's video is we're going to go through a case study of one of our big clients, any bank transformation program. Quickly before I start, a couple of minutes on ourselves. Agile is a dedicated architecture company. Enterprise and solution architecture is what we do, with a particular speciality in organizations with a BPM, so a target state. Our brand promise is to identify the right change and make it predictable. In other words, make sure you're doing the right things and doing them right. And the value proposition for us, and in fact generally we believe for enterprise architecture, is to enable you to execute your business strategy with confidence while minimizing cost and risk and maximizing future agility. Okay, so enough generically on us. First of all, something we're very proud of. Very recently we won the inaugural award for excellence in enterprise architecture in Australasia. That was judged by the Australian Computing Society, the International Association of Enterprise Architects, the New Zealand Information Technology Professionals, and IASA, the International Association of Solution Architects. And that's a program we're going to talk about today. So there are three aspects of winning that award. First of all, your methodology and approach. Secondly, the outcomes that the organization achieved as a result of it. And thirdly, you had to demonstrate some aspect of innovation. And that's what I'm going to cover in the next 5 minutes or so. So first in our approach, we start at the enterprise architecture level by looking at what we call an executive business capability model, which is used to manage up and to look at the consulting aspects of enterprise architecture. We then look at what are the outcomes the organization is attempting to achieve and produce a few high-level heat maps around things like competitive advantage and where their current costs are, where there are data quality issues, etc., etc. So we did that for ME Bank in 2010, and the decision was that based upon the strategy and where they wanted to take the organization, pretty much every piece of technology in the bank had to go, with a couple of exceptions, the credit card system, etc. Once we do that, we go into the high-level design of the program, and for that we need a more detailed view of the business capability model, which we refer to as an architecture view. Once we have that architecture view, we can overlay the current state, all of the systems, and other aspects of the business in order to understand exactly where they're starting from. Once you understand where you are and where you need to be, which is the target state, and the target state is driven by the gap between your current state and the capacity to support the business outcomes, you can then develop a roadmap to that state. So that's, if you like, our enterprise architecture services. We did that in ME Bank over a period of about 4 months, and the result was a roadmap identifying 25 new systems and 7 major upgrades to existing systems, estimated to take out over 5 years. We then went into our conceptual design, or a solution architecture approach, and for each of those projects, so we bundled those 26-ish solutions into 13 projects, and for each one of those projects we determined what is the detailed project intent, and from there derived the solution summary and the business case. In terms of execution methodology, 2 of those projects are executed using a traditional waterfall, and 11 using agile execution. And in fact, our conceptual design process is specifically designed in order to support both. Final piece of the equation, I guess, is governance, making sure that you're doing things right, and we do that by establishing 3 separate things, because in our view, governance should be follow the Westminster system of government or model, and particularly the separation of powers. So we developed the legislation, or if you like, the principles, and then established the police force and the courts as the 2 governance bodies, and we sat on those bodies for the execution of the program itself. Okay, to the solutions, there's only, as I said, 24 of them, 24 and 26, depending on the account of the small ones. But the 7 primary ones were to bring in a brand new core banking solution, roll out business process management across the organization, bring in a new data warehouse and BI solution, both a paper scanning and document and records management solution to move them from paper to effectively an electronic environment, a new integration solution to support SOA, Web Method CSB, and then a brand new security solution to support single sign-on by the end of the program. And you read more detail about them there on that slide. So the results were very impressive. So we finished within 2% of the time and 20% of the cost that we originally estimated, and we contributed to very material improvements in ME Bank overall, arching numbers around return on equity, cost income ratio, net profit, customer growth. Though it is, of course, worth stressing that it wasn't just the transformation program, and other leadership changes and things were going on in parallel, which also contributed to achieving those numbers. There was a material improvement in both staff and customer satisfaction, and in fact the program has gone on to win 2 subsequent awards in the ACS Digital Disruption Awards for 2015. ME won gold medals in both the customer digital experience and IT staff transformation categories. What I was most proud of is the rollout of the business process management tool supported by the new core banking platform T24. The business process management tool selected was Pegasystems. They are now achieving over 90%, in fact in the high 90% straight through processing for all deposit accounts. And as you can see from the statistics quoted here in the slide, a dramatic improvement in mortgages and home loans in addition. Okay, so quick thing on the final piece, which was the piece of innovation. So the first piece of innovation was our 3-level of capability model. The fact that we bring a lot more rigor to capability model development than perhaps other enterprise architecture organizations, including things like process affinity analysis, data clustering analysis, and other techniques, which enable 3 levels of the model to be in sync with each other and used for 3 different purposes, although perfectly aligned. So the first one you see here is the executive view, which I alluded to earlier, is used for managing upwards and aligning the strategic direction and talking to the board, etc. The next level is the architecture view, which is used for deep design of the program around what is the footprint of the CRM versus the core banking system versus document management, etc., to understand at a very detailed level exactly what the boundary and footprints are between the different solutions. And the final level is to add what we call service containers in Fragile to Agile. And these service containers, which are the addition of these red boxes to the business capability model, solve the service granularity problem for SOA. So once you have determined what these red boxes are, and I'll give you one input to that in a minute, determining the right granularity for a service is a simple engineering exercise. I continue to decompose my process until the needs of an individual process can be entirely met by the data, function, and skills sitting inside a service container or red box. Stop. I have now finished process design and I'm into service design, and that is the right granularity which to expose my services. So there are probably about 15 or so business inputs and about 20 or so technical inputs into deriving these service containers. It's a critical part of our intellectual property, but I will give you one example, which is sharing. So within any financial services institution, there will be a capability model or capability called credit risk decisioning. And 2 of those sub-capabilities of that are customer risk scoring and transaction risk scoring. One of the determinants of where you place a service containers is the capability shareable across the organization or not? So if you think of customer risk scoring, so in financial services, what is Glenn Smith's capacity to repay $100,000 is considered the customer risk. Now, customer risk is completely independent of product. So Glenn Smith's capacity to repay $100,000 is Glenn Smith's capacity to repay $100,000, and it's completely independent of the product. Am I going for a home loan, a margin loan, a car loan, etc.? All of that's irrelevant when it comes to determining customer risk. Transaction risk, on the other hand, is fundamentally business line or product specific. So am I asking for a $100,000 loan on a $3 million property in New York, or am I asking for a $370,000 loan on a $380,000 property in Las Vegas? And that represents fundamental different transaction risks for the bank. In margin lending, am I asking for a loan against BHP Billiton, or am I asking for a margin loan against Dodgy Miner Inc.? Again, those transaction risk is fundamentally different in margin lending as it is in mortgage or home loan lending. So transaction risk scoring is fundamentally non-shareable. And one of the rules of a service container is it cannot contain both capabilities which are shareable and capabilities which are non-shareable. So in other words, you cannot put the service container around all of credit risk decisioning. You have to drive them down one lower and expose services for customer risk scoring and expose services for transaction risk scoring. Once you do that, you will start to achieve the level of reuse that SOA promises on the customer risk scoring across the whole organization, and even within the transaction risk scoring services, you'll achieve reuse within the individual product lines. So the margin lending transaction risk service will be able to be used across all margin lending products, and the home loan one across all home loan products. Well, that's it. There will be some more press releases out about the ME Bank Transformation Programme, which you should be able to read online if you do a quick search. Thank you for listening, and I hope it was of interest.